Hey YouTube, Droid here. I know it's been a minute since the last video, and to keep it short, it's because I've been very busy with college and other family issues as of late. But also, to be completely honest, I have simply not been motivated to stream lately, much less, make videos. Still, I owe it to the people supporting me. That's you guys, by the way. To keep making content both on Twitch and on YouTube. I've got some great ideas for both in the pipeline, so be sure to follow and sub to see what I've got in store. Now, onto the video itself. What I wanted to do in this series was make some informational content about what I'm going to be using in the infamous Tuesday. For those of you who are unaware, Witch Queen is coming out on February 22nd, 2022, and that is on a Tuesday. So 2/22/22 on a Tuesday. Pretty cool. Anyways. Forewarning, I will typically be staying away from Void subclass-based builds, as Void 3.0 will probably change up the ways we play those subclasses pretty significantly, with the only planned exceptions of those being a Night Stalker build for Vanish and Smoke on Omnioculus because of how strong it is, and because I feel like that subclass type will still be pretty viable since there is an exotic surrounding it. And also a Bubble build because Bubble isn't going to change a whole lot, probably, with Void 3.0. First up is going to be the Hunters. If you don't play this class, please still watch this one through so that way you can tell your friends, or even better, know what you're talking about when you see some poor LFG schmuck playing on Hunter and DPSing Sabbath in with a duty bound from the Nightfall for some reason. Yes, I've seen it before. It happened on Argos for whatever reason. Anyways, if you guys want to choose which class will be next, head on over to my Twitter, which should be on screen now somewhere and in the description. I will have a pinned poll on my profile that you all can participate in. Also, a slight disclaimer, most of the builds I'll be making in these builds will have general recommendations based on what your individual playstyle is, so this isn't a one-size-fits-all copy and paste type of scenario, rather a guide on understanding the mods at your disposal and how best to use them. These videos took a lot of time to put together, and I used a lot of different resources to make them. If you all want a guide on how to use some of the various resources that I utilized, along with links to them, go ahead and let me know in the comments. If these videos get enough support over the next few weeks, I'll try to get it out before Witch Queen so you guys can mess around and try out build crafting for yourselves. Anyways, onto the Hunter builds. In the current meta, Hunters excel in the area of AdClear for the most part, so most of these builds are going to be revolving around the idea of that playstyle, and since Hunters do not have an ability to block themselves from damage with a barricade or heal using a rift, most of the mods in these builds are going to be focused on keeping you alive. We will be covering a Stasis AdClear build, a Night Stalker support build, and a general Celestial Nighthawk build. Yes, I know Void 3.0 is coming out in Witch Queen, and I'll probably make an updated video after the DLC releases, but I do think this build is strong enough to warrant making now, just in case it works with Void 3.0, which I imagine it will. Up first, we have the Revenant Stasis build for some of the strongest ad control I have ever seen, plus it holds up in the endgame extremely well. I'll probably have some gameplay of Confluxes and Master Vogue running in the background here so you guys can see just how effective it is, especially on the Barrier Champ. First up, the exotics. Our weapon of choice is the Augur's Scepter with its exotic catalyst, and the armor is the Star Eater Scales. If you want to use a different exotic weapon, a Headstun kinetic weapon also works but won't give you anywhere near the same amount of AdClear as with Augurs. Next, we got our subclass, with its aspects and fragments. I'm running Revenant with Touch of Winter and Grim Harvest for aspects, and for fragments I'm using the Whisper of Impetus for uptime on our exotics perk, Rending for consistency in using our kinetic with stasis, Fissures for extra AdClear, Chains or Rhyme for self-preservation, and either Shards if you're using a Glacier Grenade and a Headstone weapon, or Bonds if you're using a Duskfield Grenade with Augur's Scepter. As for your other weapons, it's pretty much entirely up to personal preference. This build is pretty much entirely based on Augurs and the fragments being used with it, so the rest of your loadout is going to be just whatever the activity you are doing calls for. I have a handful of weapons on me that can fit a number of tasks. Most of the weapons I will have are going to be Arc or Solar, since the Hive tend to have those types of shields. I have the Arc Ikelos SMG for general AdClear, and also in case I want to use a Warmind Cell build, but mostly it's just for its consistency and perks. I can also bring the Solar Borrowed Time from Gambit, since it can roll Thresh, which will help me get the Augur's Catalyst perk up as often as possible. I also have some double special loadouts too, with a Reservoir Burst Fusion or the Salvager's Salvo, both of which have perks that can do insane ad control. For heavy weapons, I'll bring in just some general big chunk damage weapons like rockets, such as the Hothead or Ascendancy, as well as some swords for AdClear. I have the 2 Eager Edge swords for shields and moving quickly, plus a Solar Solo Scar, or Arc Hero of Ages, with chain reaction for ad control, plus a Zephyr with Cold Steel for controlling some chunkier enemies. I realize most of you may not have access to all of these weapons, but if you have them, I definitely recommend dusting them off and trying them out, as they can be quite useful. For armor and mods, all you will need for elements is a Stasis armor piece and a Void armor piece. That's it. The rest is all general mods with no element needed, which is super nice. The mods you need are Protective Light, which I think is going to be a name I'll be saying quite often from now on, and Elemental Shards for Void and Stasis respectively. The other mods are Elemental Charge, Font of Wisdom, and Elemental Armaments, or Melee Wellmaker. For stats, I'd recommend speccing into Intellect primarily, and then either Recovery or Discipline after that. Note that after the changes to abilities this season, more than 80 Intellect is unnecessary for most of the activities that you'll be in. The way this build works is using the Scepter to get lots of kills and making a ton of Stasis Shards and Orbs to fuel your super as quickly as you can. Once it's up, you just proc the Catalyst perk and shred away. This thing absolutely dominates any and all ads in the remote vicinity of where you're shooting, even if you are focusing on a bigger target. Elemental Shards gives you Stasis Wells when you pick up those shards that you're making with your abilities or weapons, which fuels the whole build. Elemental Armaments or Melee Wellmaker also creates wells for the build, in addition to the Elemental Shards. The wells that are picked up activate both Elemental Charge and Font of Wisdom, which give Charge with Light stacks and increase super regen respectively. The Protective Light helps keep you alive on top of the Stasis fragments. Also, if you are targeting one of the big enemies with Augurs and you're getting low on ammo, just chuck a shuriken at something and Whisper of Impetus will reload Augurs to 97 ammo, allowing you to continue DPSing that chunky target. And that's it. Just clearing ads and keeping you alive. Again, this build has shown me time and time again that it can hold up well in endgame content, and it is so unbelievably strong. I can't emphasize enough how strong this build is in both solo and team play. Next, we have a more support-heavy build with the Omni Oculus Night Stalker. The goal of this is to be able to keep yourself and your teammates alive and be of overall support to them in a more passive role. This one is going to be a little more simple than the Stasis one, don't worry. What's more, yes, I am aware that Void subclasses will be changing in Witch Queen with Void 3.0, and if you follow me on Twitter, I'll probably post a quick text method update on how to fix this one and the Bubble Titan build in the first few days of Witch Queen. If these videos get enough support, I'll make a short video on how to adjust these, just to kind of get the information out there a little bit quicker. First, for our subclass, we're using Bottom Tree Night Stalker with Gambler's Dodge and either a Vortex or Void Wall Grenade, your choice. I prefer the Vortex Grenade. Our exotics of choice are going to be the Omni Oculus for armor and Wither Horde for weapon. Omni Oculus gives you 2 smoke charges and gives you and your allies damage resistance, or DR as I'll be referring to it for the most part, of times 4 while invisible, plus making allies invisible gives you 50% of your melee energy per ally. Meaning, you can throw your smoke at the ground, and as long as you smoke 2 allies, you'll be able to get your entire smoke back. Your other weapons are entirely up to you, depending on whatever your encounter or mission requires. I'm using an Ikelos SMG or a 7th Seraph Sidearm most of the time, but I also have other weapons that I can use like the Gnawing Hunger, Grid Skipper, Jurassic Green, Arc Logic, and more. For power weapons, I have a variety of swords and rockets I mentioned in the previous build, but this is also sort of a quote-unquote use what the situation requires type of build, as this build can be used in both DPS scenarios and endgame activities, as well as general AdClear encounters or GMs. For armor and mods, you'll need 2 Arc and 2, maybe 1 Void pieces, depending. We'll get to that in a second. For Powerful Friends and Radiant Light for Arc, and Protective Light and Reaping Wellmaker for Void. You can change out Reaping Wellmaker for any other well-making mod, since you're on a Void subclass, but Reaping Wellmaker is pretty easy to use since you're getting your dodge up pretty often. And finally, Elemental Charge for getting charged with light. This build functions very well in keeping yourself and your teammates alive using the Bottom Tree Night Stalker's Vanish in Smoke. You use the melee ability to invis your teammates and or yourself, and it allows you to move around freely in PvE with only things like Axion darts being able to track you through the invis in my experience. The build synergizes well with your grenade as well, since making teammates invisible gives grenade energy, and hitting enemies with your grenades gives melee energy. The mods allow for you to stay alive and be of use to your teammates at all times, with the main use of Powerful Friends and Radiant Light for stat bonuses, giving plus 20 to both mobility and strength respectively. Reaping Wellmaker makes a kill that follows a dodge spawn a Void Well, which utilizes Elemental Charge to grant you charge with light stacks for Protective Light, which also gives DR, as does the Invis for Omni. Proccing Protective Light and then going invisible resets the timer on the original Protective Light timer, which theoretically can allow you to have ×4 DR for 20 seconds with 2 stacks of Charge with Light for 1 charge of Protective Light. I know that's a lot of random info to throw at you at once, but I believe that understanding these unique interactions and the other ins and outs of your build will help you to utilize it better and be able to create more interesting builds in the future. The build itself doesn't do anything crazy, it just allows you to keep yourself alive and to help your teammates if they need it. While most of the support builds may not be as flashy as our previous Stasis build, they do their intended job and it can be much more useful in the long run. Our final Hunter build is a classic, to-the-point DPS build. AdClear will be of minimal priority, but may still be useful to keep in the back of our minds when running the encounter or mission. This build isn't really meant for solo play, but it can be used to mild success in those times, but it'll be best utilized in team play like raids. For this build, I'm going to recommend a general loadout for weapons, more so than the previous ones, but it'll be based on whatever you or your team feels is necessary. Our subclass of choice will be Bottom Tree Gunslinger and the Marksman's Dodge. The grenade doesn't really matter that much. I'm personally using Swarm Grenade because it's easier to use against ads. Bottom Tree Gunslinger is important because it gives our Goldie precision damage. Our exotic armor of choice is either the Celestial Nighthawk or the Star Eater scales, depending on your preference. Celestial does more damage, but Star Eaters has more uptime on the super. If you're not doing a locked loadout activity, you could probably just switch between, like, go into the encounter, pop your Celestial, switch to Star Eaters to get it up quickly, and then once you get your super up, then you can switch over to Celestial. The exotic weapon of choice depends on your teammates' loadouts. A good safe choice could be Gallahorn, or if one of your teammates is already using it, you could throw on any number of DPS rockets, the best option of which is the Adept Hothead from Grandmaster Strikes. But basically any rocket launcher with the Explosive Light, Lasting Impression, Frenzy, or Vorpal should work just fine. The best damage in those perks is in that order, with Explosive Light being the most and Vorpal being the least. By the way, the final week of the season will feature the Hothead along with the Hung Jury Scout Rifle on the Lake of Shadows Nightfall, which is the easiest one this season, so get that power level up if you want to grab one before the end of the season. The rest of your weapons are just up to whatever you want to use or whatever fits the situation best. A DPS sniper couldn't hurt, and a Blending Edge grenade launcher is also super useful. So take a look at your vaults and see what you've got. I'm personally bringing a Blinding and Slideshot Ignition Code from Season 14, and a Rewind Rounds Frenzy Kratos Revenge from VOG, and pairing them with a Borrowed Time from Gambit that has Thresh to give me a lot of super uptime. But like I said earlier, it is entirely up to you. As for armor and mods, you'll need to have 3 Void Armor pieces in order to socket the Reaping Wellmaker, Well of Tenacity, and Protective Light mods. The 2 other pieces are for Taking Charge and Elemental Charge. I'd recommend speccing into around 80 Intellect again, just like the Stasis build, and as high of recovery and mobility as possible. But I would definitely prioritize Recov over mobility. This build is using your loadout and abilities for DPS alone, and using the mods just to keep you alive in between DPS phases. The Reaping Wellmaker, which, like we discussed earlier, makes a Void Well when getting a kill after dodging. That well gives both a single stack of Charge with Light from Elemental Wellmaker, as well as a little bit of damage resist from Well of Tenacity. Those Charge with Light stacks are for, guessed it, Protective Light, just to keep us alive. Taking Charge, while not being of much use unless you're using one of those new helmet mods that make orbs for a specific weapon type, is mainly just for after DPS, when you pick up orbs from your teammates Well or Bubble in their supers, so that way you can always have Protective Light ready to proc even immediately after the DPS phase. So, that's it for our hunters. There's a ton of other fun builds like Top Arc Strider with Lars' Handshake and a 1-2 punch build, and probably a lot more than I missed. If I didn't include it, I either haven't heard of it, or thought that maybe it didn't have much to gain from a build mods type video. However, if you guys have any cool ideas for builds, feel free to throw them in the comments, or if you want, feel free to hit me up on Twitter at It's Kyle Kiddo. The link will also be in the description. This is a great place to go to because that's where the poll to decide the next video will be, like I mentioned earlier. So go on over to my profile page on Twitter, and the poll will be in the pinned tweet on my profile and in the description if I remember to link it after I post the video. The poll will close in around 3 days from when this video goes live, so make sure to be quick. Also, I want to thank everyone for watching, and have an amazing day. See you in the next one. Deuces.
Right, go into the portal right now, please, please, now. Look behind you. Look behind you. Look behind you. Help! Help me! Help me! What the fuck? Help me!